You're.
No, that's fine.
I don't be serious.
That was fine. They like, yo, they from New York. All right. And I did that one really good too. All right. All right.
You gonna hate me.
All right.
That's my fortune.
Oh, I had that really good. All right, I got it.
3, 2, 1.
Here we go.
Welcome back to Let's Talk About Investing. I hope you're staying positive, motivated, and most of all safe. My name is Kieran, and I've got my intelligent co-host with me, Hugh. So in the last video, we talked about the 8 steps to purchasing your first investment property. In this video, we're going to do a deeper dive into one of those steps, which is LLCs.
In this episode, we'll discuss the benefits of forming an LLC versus running a business as a sole proprietorship or a sole partnership. Typically, these types of business, the sole proprietor is a person liable for the debts of the business. Because the business of a sole proprietorship does not really separate the legal entities of the owner and the business of itself. When you run a business like this, a creditor may lay claim to not only the assets of the business, but also your personal assets as well. This could be your personal car, your home, bank accounts. So we just kind of want to just take a deeper dive into forming the LLCs, the steps that you would want to take to form LLCs, the do's and don'ts that you would need, and just kind of educate you a little bit more.
But as always, when we kind of put these videos together, we always got to put these disclaimers out, make sure nobody comes after it. This information provided in this video does not and is not intended to constitute legal advice. Instead, all information, content, and materials available in this video are for general information purposes only. Anything that happens after the following device of this video is the responsibility of the viewer and not the video creator. Now that's out the way, what is an LLC? So an LLC is a limited liability company. The great thing about having an LLC is it separates your personal assets from your business. In the event somebody does try to come and sue you, they won't be able to come after your personal assets, your home, your car, and things of that nature, right? Another good thing about LLCs is the pass-through taxation. To be able to have LLC, you have to pay taxes once versus other different kind of corporations that get passed, well, I shouldn't say corporations, other entities where you can have to pay double taxes. So taxation, another thing is good, as we stated before, is also keeping your liabilities, your assets separated from your business structure.
So there are roughly 6 major benefits to forming an LLC. These aren't the only benefits to forming an LLC, but these are the ones that we deem beneficial and fall within the scope of this discussion. The first one is limited liability, flexible membership, management, pass-through taxation, heightened credibility, and survivability.
So what are the benefits of an LLC? Members, in other words, what the owners of an LLC are called, are shielded from personal liability for the actions of the LLC and its other members. That's really good because, as I stated before, something happens with you in your business, somebody slips and falls, hurts themselves. You don't want to have to worry about where you lay your head at night. You want to make sure your home and where you're keeping your family is safe, you don't have to worry about it. What this means is that creditors cannot pursue the personal assets, house savings account of owners to pay business debts. Said before, you want to make sure your house is safe. Another thing that is good about LLCs is that you can also pass it down. Depending how you write up your operational agreement, which is very key, is that you want to make sure that you can write it up in a certain way that you can, if something does happen to any of your members, that it gets passed down to a family member, wife, or whoever that you deem is functional to carry on in your state. One more thing I do want to mention is something called piercing the veil. Now, the fact that you have an LLC does not mean that things can't happen. Every case is different. So that reason, talking to a lawyer is one of the best things. But there is something called piercing the veil. What you want to make sure that you structure your LLCs in the right way and that you handle your business in the right way, so this way these things can't happen.
So another benefit is flexible memberships. Flexible membership means that a member of an LLC can be an individual. It could be set up as a partnership. It could be part of a corporation could be a member. The members are the owners of the LLC. So what this means is that a corporation can form an LLC and own an LLC. Why would a corporation do this? If a corporation wanted to go, let's say, into like the housing market, the corporation can then go and purchase that asset and put that asset inside of an LLC. So now if something was to happen, let's say if someone was to get injured on that property, they cannot go and sue the corporation for what the corporation is worth, because now the LLC is giving that limited liability and protecting the corporation's asset of itself. Also, management. Members can manage a LLC or elect a management group to do so. Corporations, on the other hand, have to be managed by like a board of directors. This will come into play as we actually discuss more, talking about like the registered agent portion of this.
No, I think that what you said was really good just now with the whole thing with the management, because with like bigger corporations, you have a lot of more people to talk to and go through. With LLCs, it kind of makes it a little bit easier, right? I'm just thinking of like a business flow. Am I understanding that right?
No, that's correct. So let's say if you wanted to buy a property or do certain things, the different management structure means that you have to go through more hurdles, more loops.
Okay, so now we got pass-through taxation, right? Now, we don't want to get taxed more than we need to be, right? So good thing about LLCs, it has pass-through taxation. The tax is due at the individual level with LLCs. And another great thing about LLCs is when you have your LLC structures, you can have multiple LLCs, especially in real estate, which, that's a lot that what this channel is going to be about, plus other things. But with real estate, you can have, a parent LLC, and then you can have your child LLCs. Each property you would have as its own LLC, and then you would have the parent LLC, which would be controlling the properties. So all the income you make from property A, property B, property C, goes up to the parent LLC, and then that's where you're paying your taxes on.
LLC also gives you heightened credibility. Just to kind of explain this, let's say if you were offering a service, now you're trying to, like, you're either calling someone or you're doing door to door. If you go to someone and says, hey, like I'm offering a tax service, for example, now you're asking this person to kind of trust you with confidential information. They may not be as foregoing knowing that you're just an individual person versus saying, okay, like, I have a business. Like, it shows that you have a proper business structure. If you're just kind of like doing this, let's say, even if it's just a side hustle, someone may not feel as confident in you versus saying, okay, this is actual business. They're actually rooted. They actually have documentation. They actually, took the time out to structure this, as well as survivability. If you're operating a business as yourself, once you die, that business pretty much gets dissolved. As an LLC, that allows the business to kind of continue going on. You can either elect a family member, or if you have other members, they can kind of continue to keep that business going.
Everything you said was so accurate, so true, especially, the credibility part really hits home, because, if, somebody's calling in for a service and they just say, hey, my name is Kieran Trost, and like, okay, well, what does that mean? But then if you say, I am from Investments LLC or whatever, they're going to, think of it a little bit different, especially, followed by obviously a page, a website, probably Instagram page, Facebook page, things of that nature. It just gives you more credibility. But I do want to talk a little bit about why you need an LLC, and then also structuring an LLC the correct way. So I got a friend who I grew up with. He's a doctor now. I'm very proud of him. When we were talking about, investments and stuff like that, he was mentioning how he has his home, but then he bought another house for passive income. And in doing so, he put the other home in his own name. And I want to point out to everyone, if you're thinking about buying another home, make sure that you buy the home. If it's supposed to be for passive income, you need to make sure you buy it under an LLC, because it is one of the best ways, if you haven't heard already from what we've talked about, of making sure that you are not liable if anything happens. So we kind of want to dive into how to form an LLC, and then also things about how to properly structure your LLC. One of the first things you need to do when you're about to form an LLC, the first step obviously is choosing an LLC name. You need to make sure that you have a name for your LLC, and then when you're filing it, when you go to the website for whatever state you choose, there's something there called DBA, right? So you can have your LLC name, then you can have a DBA, which is doing business as. So you don't have to have them with the same name, but if you want to call it some kind of, I don't know if you're into music industry or you're doing carpentry, whatever, if you have a cool name that you want to have it for, you want to name it as and do business as your logo, but you could also have an LLC name. So these are the kind of things you want to think of when you're forming your LLC. The first thing is obviously what you're going to name it.
The next thing you kind of want to do is choose a state in which you want to form your LLC. This becomes very important when you're looking to form like an anonymous LLC. The reason being that not every state offers an anonymous LLC. Anonymity, did I say it right? Damn, I think I did say that and I messed up.
I always say anonymous because the anonymity, I always get like tongue tied and stuff like that, but I think they understand what you were trying to say.
So with an anonymous LLC, you don't have to list the members or the owners of the LLC to the Secretary of State. Now, this also helps protect your assets. So if someone was to, let's say people actually make a living out of suing companies. Now, if they wanted to go and sue the company, they won't know who the actual owners are of the company. They would actually have to do more research and spend more money to obtain this information. And most of the time, this is actually not worth their time. So this also protects you and protects your personal asset. One mistake people make when forming an LLC is thinking that if they go to a state that has less taxes, then they won't have to pay as much taxes. This is not necessarily true when you're forming a brick and mortar business or if you're buying property. You need to form your LLC in the state that the business will actually be doing business or doing transaction. For a property, if you form your LLC outside of the state, and let's say if you form your LLC in Pennsylvania or Nevada and you buy your property in like New York, if you need to actually get a tenant out, it's going to make that much harder for you, because Nevada does not have jurisdiction over New York laws. So you have to keep this in mind. Your taxes are paid based off of the state that you're actually doing business in. It was what's called as forming like a foreign business. If you want to form your LLCs in Nevada, you'll have to file a special form to actually be able to do business in New York.
So what are the states that you can do the LLC in?
Delaware, Nevada, Wyoming, New Mexico, and
I think you got them all. Delaware, New Mexico, Wyoming, and Nevada. Yeah,
I think so.
No, you got it right. So one of the things you mentioned, I kind of want to just rewind a little bit when you were talking about doing business. Let's just say you file for a LLC in Nevada, and then you're doing business in New Jersey, and you have the property, managed by the Nevada LLC. You're going to be running into trouble with that. One, you have an LLC and you're doing business in the state, as Hugh mentioned earlier, that you're not operating in. The better way of doing it is to have a New Jersey LLC and then have that LLC report back to the Nevada LLC. Why am I saying this? What happens is if something does happen where a tenant tries to sue you or somebody gets hurt or whatever the case may be, now you're going back and forth to court, you're going to lose your anonymous LLC status by also trying to file it within New Jersey or any other state. Right? You want to make sure that that business stays within the realm of the state that provides its LLC, and then also create an LLC in the other business so that this way you're doing business in that state as that LLC. So we'll call it, New Jersey LLC. We'll just throw it out there as a name. And then that business is going to have the parent LLC being the Nevada one. Because you're going to run into an issue with that. It's like you're basically an alien for that state. You're not supposed to be there. Right? You didn't file any business agreements. You didn't file or pay any formation fees. The formation fees that you applied to, associated with, I should say, is Nevada. So you don't want to do that. So let's just make sure that people understand that. One of the other items when you're forming an LLC is choosing the registered agent. Now, I've had people talk to me and say, why can't I just be my own registered agent? Well, first, the registered agent, right? What is a registered agent? I should kind of break that down before I even go into that, right? Registered agent is the person that is going to service or process or receive important legal notices and tax documents on behalf of the LLC. So this person needs to be available during business hours. So it's basically 8 to 5, I believe. Issue with that is if you put yourself as a registered agent and somebody tries to serve you, and if they can't get to you, you're going to run into a big problem because you're supposed to be a registered agent. You're always supposed to be available for those documents. Now, if somebody does try to sue you and you're not around, then what they can do is, the person that is trying to sue you can easily say, okay, this LLC or this business is fraudulent just off the basis that you weren't able to receive a document of being sued. So just make sure when you're doing for your registered agents, when you're looking for those kind of services, that you can put yourself down. It depends on what business you have, but it's probably better to have someone who's always going to be able to pick up those items. What I find when, looking for our LLC, even when, we were looking up our LLC and starting our own business, you and I, one of the things we were looking up was virtual mailboxes and things of that nature. It's very important that, if you do go for a virtual mailbox, so this way, if you wanted to give yourself, you don't reside in a state that has anonymous, right? Has anonymity, I should say, right? That provides anonymous structure. It's good for you to have work with a company that provides a virtual mailbox and B also provides registered agent. You want to make sure that you're doing both, because you can go ahead and get the virtual mailbox, but you might run into a problem later on. Right. So make sure that you really look up some companies that provide that kind of information. There's a lot out there, but if you're looking up companies that provide a virtual mailbox, make sure if you're going to go that route, that they also provide registered agent services. It's going to cost a little bit more, but in the end, it's going to save you.
One thing to discuss with the virtual mailbox, and this is something that we ran into. So when you're actually picking your registered agent, knowing where the virtual mailbox is actually being hosted. What happened to us when we were actually looking into this, the registered agent was renting the virtual mailbox address from another company because they weren't actually registered in Nevada. So you can have a registered agent that has a registered agent. And what this does, go ahead.
No, you're right. It's going to double up the fees. Is that where you're going?
Yeah. So when we were comparing two companies, one company was more. And as we asked more questions and as we educated ourselves and got a better understanding, we realized that the virtual mailbox was actually being hosted in a company or through a company that was in Nevada. This way they can then use that address. It's hard to really spot until you actually ask the right questions, but just keep this in mind when you're paying attention to why one company may actually be charging you more than another company.
So they leased out the virtual mailboxes and then they leased it out to us, and the price was amplified because of that. So I mean, they got to make their money, right? So it's just, make sure that you go for a company that you understand exactly what you're paying for and how they're operating. Speaking about
also,
oh, go ahead. Sorry. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
One thing people overlook when forming their LLCs is the preparation of an operational agreement. In most states, the operational agreement needs to be written, but you can actually have a verbal operation agreement between two people. We can kind of go into a business saying, okay, hey, we're going to do everything 50-50, split the cost, or someone, be 70-30, depending on how the investments go. What happens with a verbal operational agreement is later on down the line, as the business grows, one person may say, well, I've been doing X amount of work and I know we discussed this, but I feel like I've been contributing this and you haven't really been contributing this. You want to minimize things as the company grows by pretty much structuring the company to say whose job is what's this person's responsibility. Is this person supposed to be taking notes? Is this person supposed to be filing different forms? Is this person supposed to be looking up things or checking if you have tenants, checking in with tenants? Because now you can go back and say, well, this is what your jobs are, this is what your responsibilities are. Also, when certain things happen, let's say if the company was to get sued or who's held liable for certain things, it can be in the operational agreement saying, okay, this is what this person is supposed to be looking after. It will save you a lot of arguments and discussions later on down the line. It kind of just gives you a lay of the land or structures your company so it looks more formal.
So the next step when forming LLC is follow your LLC with your state. Now we talked a lot about structuring your LLCs and which state you want to put in, if you want anonymous or whatever. But there are certain common elements with following your LLC, right? So it's name, principal, location, and purpose of the business, the registered agent, name, and the physical address. You're always going to run into that. And then you also want to figure out if you want to do an LLC, which is member manage or managed member. I already know some of you may know, but for those who don't know, let me describe that, right? So member managed LLCs are for more small businesses, right? So you are a member, but you're also managing your LLC. So you don't have any other entity or somebody else doing the structure for you. So you're taking care of the phone calls, you're mowing the lawn, you're doing all that other stuff, and you're also the member of the LLC. The other one is a manager managed LLC. For this one is when you want an LLC, but you're also giving somebody control of it. So you are listed as the owner. When you're doing a manager managed LLC, You have to list the people who are going to be managing in it, but you also have to list the owners of the LLC. Whenever you're doing your anonymous LLC, this is the one that you want to place in there, because you also want to make sure that your anonymous LLCs, when you're structuring it, if you choose to go that right, is going to be your parent LLC. So that's why you want to do manager manage LLC, because you also want to make sure that you're saying, hey, we are controlling things, right? And then your child LLCs, right? The lower ones, the ones that you're going to have for each property that you own, you're going to put member manage, because that anonymous LLC is going to be managing their child LLCs, right? I hope I didn't confuse anyone when I said that, right? So let's just say you have your anonymous LLC, we're just going to call it Wyoming LLC. And then you have a property in, I don't know, Florida. So the one in Florida, you're going to have your Florida LLC, and the member of that LLC is going to be the one that's in Wyoming. Remember, if you do it the other way around, so let's just say if you have the child LLC being manager managed, you're going to have to list the owner and also who's controlling the business. In that case, you're going to lose your anonymous title, because you have to put the owner down. That's why you want to make sure you put your member managed LLC. Don't worry about it. If this is confusing for you, we also have a video that we created, which actually I'm standing up right next to this whiteboard right here, and I'm going through it and I draw it out. So this way it makes more sense, because this information, when we were learning it ourselves, take a little time to digest. So if you do feel like you need to look and watch the video over, please do.
So once you file your paperwork and it's approved, you get a certificate coming back from the state. Pretty much what this means is now your company is official. Once you have this paperwork, you can actually take this and go to the IRS and file for your EIN, which is also known as your employer identification number. Without this, you can't technically open up a business bank account. One thing you need to keep in mind is that you don't have to pay for an EIN number. You just have to go and file this with the IRS.
No, you're right. They try to get me. They try to get me with that one.
So one thing you really have to be careful is there are fraudulent sites that look very identical to the IRS site, and you really have to pay attention to this, to the URLs when you're doing this, because they'll make you go through the process and the steps, and then at the end they'll actually have like a filing fee. Pretty much what they're doing is just filing this on your behalf, but you can go to the IRS and file this yourself. So you do not have to pay for this step.
Yeah, we gotta iterate that one, because they remember I called you and I'm like, man, they try to charge me $300 something, and I only caught it because I looked at the IRS, the URL. Plus, previous business I didn't have to pay. So I'm thinking to myself, why am I having to pay now? When I looked at it again, I was like, oh wow. And the person went even as far as to make their the GUI, the website, I should say, the way it looked was, pretty similar to how the IRS site was. So they put some time and effort into it. God knows how many people they get a day.
When you think about it, 350, even if you get one person a day, you're walking off pretty well, So just be careful with sites like this. This is not something that you have to pay for. And if you've never done this before, you won't know. You kind of would just pay it thinking that, okay, this is something that I have to pay for, until, well, one, either someone tells you or you realize later on down the line after you've paid it that you didn't need to do that. Now, once you obtain your EIN number, you would then go and open up a business bank account. Now, it's very critical that you open up a business bank account, because this starts to separate assets and your personal finances from the business of itself. Yes, you can technically put the money that's coming in from the business into your business account, but when you start to do this, one, it's going to make your taxes very complicated. Two, if someone was to sue you, how can you differentiate the profits of the business, or the money of the business, the assets, the income of the business, from your own personal asset? This kind of is what Kieran talked about when it comes to piercing the corporate veil. If you don't take the steps to actually separate your finances from the business finances, this will become very messy for you later on down the line.
Yeah, I mean, you couldn't have said it any better. I mean, when you hear people have a bank account, they're getting paid from wherever they're 9 to 5, and then they start a small business and they have everything going into that account. I mean, it's just madness for your tax advisor. I mean, your accountant, I should say. And you're just going to run into a problem, because you're paying stuff off, then you want to write things off, and then it just, the IRS is, I'm pretty sure they're going to hit you with, a violation, and then you're going to be in for it. So it's just best is to open a business account, checking account, and we will definitely have another video just talking about some of the top business checking accounts out there. But it's just easier. Just apply for a business checking account and then keep everything separated. So here are some quick tips for protecting your LLC. Document your business actions. Document the major business decisions and the major meetings you hold. Don't commingle business and personal assets. One of the reasons why we said, when you get your LLC, make sure you have a business account. Next, ensure adequate business capitalization. Your business will need money and the equipment and items necessary to both start and also to continue to operate. So make sure you have an adequate amount of money saved and also adequate amount of money placed into this business checking account, whichever banking organization you choose to go with. And one of the last tips that we have is make your corporate or LLC status known. Create business cards that display the name of your corporation. Also have a website, Instagram page, Facebook page, a lot of things that you can use to substantiate, to validate, I should say, your business are free. You can always get an Instagram page that's free, Facebook page free, and then Google offers a lot of different services as well to make sure that your business name is known when they are searching for it. So those are the quick tips that we have for protecting your business, your LLC, and also just making sure that is out there so that people can see it. Okay, as always, in every video, we start talking about how we're educating ourselves and how we're keeping ourselves up to date with what's going on in real estate, and then also learning new ideas and material. This month, I wrapped up 2 books. One was the Airbnb Experts Playbook: Secrets to Making 6 Figures as a Rentalpreneur. That's by Scott Shatford. Very good book. He brought some really good insight about, getting into the Airbnb game. If that is a strategy that you're going with, I recommend that book. The other book that I read was Investing in Rental Properties for Beginners. It's Buy Low, Rent High, and it's by Lisa Phillips. This book was really good. I actually felt like Lisa was communicating and having a relationship with the reader. It's a very intimate book in terms of not just getting into the real estate game just to raise prices on people, but also just helping people out as well. So very heartfelt book. It's definitely a book for if you're now getting into it, for beginners, and she also provides some really good information. No matter what level you are at, in terms of certain websites you can go to get information and to further your education in real estate. So both books I recommend you purchasing.
For me right now, I've picked up Relentless by Tim Grover. Tim Grover has worked with people like Kobe Bryant, Dwayne Wade, Michael Jordan, just to name a few, and pretty much just changing your mindset of getting from where you are now to where you want to be. Touches based on like drive, determination, and how some of those things kind of changes like how you think about stuff and how you go about just your day. The other book I'm reading is The Intelligent Investor by Benjamin Graham. For me, I want to get more into stocks. I want to get a better understanding of stocks. I want to get a better understanding of like the financial market. I haven't started it yet, but I'm actually looking forward to this. It was recommended by people like Warren Buffett, so I think it's going to be a good read. As I get more into it, I'll kind of give my thoughts on it and see whether it's more for like someone that's beginner or someone that's more advanced. So we'll see. I'm looking forward to it.
All right, as always, we'll leave you all with a motivational word. And today's one is a fine is a tax for doing something wrong. A tax is a fine for doing something right. And this was by Lowell Nussbaum, Nussbaum. I hope I pronounced it right and didn't butcher it. But I think this word is definitely really good for this specific talk that we're talking about in terms of LLCs, because you want to make sure that you do it right. You don't want to get hit with that fine. So that's about it. I mean, that pretty much wraps up the show. Hugh, you got anything else you want to mention?
Not really. Keep motivated. Repetition makes perfection.
All right. I'm going to thank you all for clicking on the video. Please, if you haven't liked it, like it. If you haven't subscribed, subscribe. We'll have more videos. The next video that we're doing is about business checking accounts, so that once you're finished with your LLCs, you got your EIN, we can also guide you with how to work on that business checking account. Thanks.